Today we are doing more difficult problems dealing with area. It's basically going to all look like this picture here where you have, in this case, a garden, but it's a rectangle and it's surrounded by a larger rectangle. Here it's a garden with a walkway around it. And it will be different types of pictures, but it'll be a rectangle inside of a rectangle. A garden measuring 10 meters by 22, so the small rectangle is 22 by 10, has a walkway installed around it with a width of X meters as shown in the diagram below. Together, the walkway and the garden have an area of 640 square meters. So first we have to just write an equation to find x. So we know that this entire rectangle, including the walkway and the garden, have the area of 640. But we only know the dimensions of the small rectangle, being the 22 by 10. So now we have to figure out the dimensions of the rectangle with the walkway. So I break it down into 3 parts. This top dimension from here to here is 22. Then here on this side, it's going to be x units. And on this side, it's going to be x units. So when you add all 3 of these pieces, x, 22, and x, the x's are like terms, so that gives me a 2x plus the 22. So that's going to be one of the dimensions. Now the other dimension, again, from here to here, using this dimension here, I know is 10. Then from here to here is x, and from here to here is x. So when I add the 3 pieces together, x plus x again is 2x, plus the 10 from the middle, that's the garden. So the equation we would use would be that 2x plus 22, that top dimension, times the side dimension 2x plus 10 is equal to the area 640. Okay, determine and state the width in meters. So now we have to solve the equation. Before I could solve the equation, we need to multiply the binomials, and I'm going to do that in a 2 by 2 box. 2x plus 10, 2x plus 22, 2x times 2x is 4x squared, 2x times 10 is 20x, 2x times 22, 44x, 22 times 10 is 220. Combine these like terms, so it's going to give me 4x squared plus the 44x and 20x is 64x plus 220 is equal to the 640. Then I'm going to subtract 640 on both sides. Sorry. And I'm going to get 4x squared plus 64x minus 420 equals 0. Okay. Now we have a trinomial, 3 terms, with this 4 in front of it. However, if all the terms could be divided by 4, we could factor out that 4 to make it a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1, which is much easier to factor. So we get x squared plus 16x minus 105. And then I could bring down that GCF of 4 and now factor the trinomial whose leading coefficient is now 1. Add to 16, multiply to negative 105. So I'm going to do exactly what I tell you guys to do. I'm going to put the negative 105 divided by x. Let's check out the table of values. I'll go to 100 and look at the integer factors. So I see 1 times negative 105, 3 times negative 35. I see that it's adding to positive 16 actually, so I'm actually going to keep the bigger numbers positive and make the smaller numbers negative. So instead of 5 and negative 21, it would be negative 5 and positive 21, which indeed adds to 16. So I have x minus 5, x plus 21. So the trickiest part of these is that the bigger numbers make it harder to factor, but if you just use the table of values the way that we've been, it makes it much simpler. Now I'm going to tee it up because this factor 4 can't equal 0. There's no variable. We only set the factors equal to 0 that have a variable. And the first one gives me that x is equal to 5. This one gives me x is negative 21, which we could reject because can't have a negative width. It's asking for the width of the walkway. So the answer is 4. That's it. Let's try the next one, which again is going to be something surrounded by a border. Talking about a park is undergoing renovations to its gardens. One garden that was originally a square is adjusted so that one side is doubled in length while the other side is decreased by 3 meters to make a new rectangular garden. Okay, this one is different. I apologize. So we're starting with a square. Now, what do we know about a garden if it's a square? The dimensions are going to be exactly the same. They're going to be x by x. But now they're saying that they're taking one side and doubling it. So if I double this dimension, what would it become? It's going to be 2x, while the other is decreased by 3 meters. So this dimension here, I could draw it to look smaller because it's being decreased by 3 meters. And I could make it x minus 3. This is the new garden after the renovations. The new rectangular garden will have an area that is 25% more than the original square garden. So this is much more difficult, but this was a Regents question that was worth 6 points this year. Not this year, an earlier year. And the way that we did it is you could find the area of the smaller garden, the original garden, would be length times width, which would be x squared. Now, if you increase that by 25%, the new area would be times by 125%, just like when we discussed exponential functions, how if it's increasing, it's going to be higher than 100%. So it's going to be, that x was needing times, but I don't want you to get confused with multiplying, 1.25, and that will give us a new area of 1.25x squared. So since it's being increased by 25%, I multiply the area by 125%, which is 1.25. I will come back after she stops screaming.